How did Islam spread to North Africa? So you may write that down. I'm going to talk about where Islam started in Saudi Arabia today, modern-day Saudi Arabia, and then how it goes into North Africa, and I'm going to be super, super quick about it. So, Muhammad, he gets his revelation from God. He says it, his followers write it, the Quran is born. Now, what happens is Muhammad makes a lot of people mad, especially around the area of Mecca. And he makes them mad because, number one, most of the people living around Mecca were polytheistic, meaning they believed in many gods. And also in Mecca, they sold a lot of these idols. A lot of people made a lot of money off selling idols. Mecca was a big deal because it's an oasis in the desert, which means a lot of the tribes who were living around there, they would come to Mecca to trade, so Mecca was a big deal, and one thing they would often buy would be idols or gods that you could take with you. So what happens is Muhammad gets his revelations, and he starts talking to a mostly polytheistic society. There were some Jewish people, there were some Christians, but most of the people were polytheistic, and he's telling them there's only one God. It doesn't go over well. Also, Muhammad is telling the people he's in a family clan. Family clans are incredibly important, just like they were in West Africa. But what he's telling people is that these clans aren't the most important thing. We can all be together under God in Islam. This also is not, people don't like that. It's going against the society. So Muhammad becomes a bit of an outsider. He has a few followers, but not a ton. He has some followers in Mecca. And he's basically told to shut up and to stop spreading this word, and he doesn't do it. So what happens is there's a plot to kill him, and he has to leave the city of Mecca. There's a plot. Some people believe that kind of like a miracle happens, God intervenes, and Muhammad is able to leave the city of Mecca, and he goes to a city called Medina, which is also in Saudi Arabia, but many miles north. In Medina, he's able to attract some followers. These followers, they develop what's called the Ummah, U-M-M-A, the Ummah, which are like really the first followers of Muhammad. What happens in Medina is his following grows. The people of Mecca still don't like him. They still want him gone. And there becomes basically a battle. People from Mecca go after him, and Muhammad responds. Muhammad is able to get an army, and he is able to defeat the people from Mecca who are going after him. Real brief history. There's a lot more to it than that. He goes into Mecca, he goes to the Kaaba, and he destroys the idols. And it's seen as this is the place for God, not for the idols or these other gods. And that is the holy place, Kaaba, in the center of Mecca now, where Muslims pray to 5 times a day. So, takes over Mecca, gets a following, and Islam begins to grow. And this is also where Muhammad is a lot different than Jesus. You just can't say, yeah, Islam, Muhammad, Christianity, Jesus. Then they're not. They are different in many ways. Jesus never leads a people like this. Jesus' followers do it. Does that make sense? It's more the disciples afterwards, where Muhammad is directly leading the people right away. But also, he's not God on earth. He is a man who's a prophet. So, Muhammad dies in the year 639. His first intervention in the cave comes in 610. He dies in 639. When he dies, his religion is established and gaining power and becoming strong. What happens in 646, 7 years after his death, is the first Muslims really start coming into Africa and taking land in northern Africa. They start coming into northern Africa and taking land throughout northern Africa. Now, 646 wasn't the first time that Muslims had been in North Africa. They've been trading with these people for quite some time. 646 is when they have 4,000 troops, and they start coming in and they start taking land. It depends what historian you talk to. Some historians say this was not really a military takeover. They say it was more they went in there, they spread, people decided to become Muslims. Some historians say no, it was definitely there was some force there. Depends who you talk to. What do we know? We know by 670, virtually all of North Africa, almost all of North Africa, becomes in the hands of Muslim empires. And this becomes the golden age, it really begins the golden age of Islam, which will last for some time. So Northern Africa gets taken over by Muslims. Not only Northern Africa, but also Spain. Spain is run by Muslims for about 600 years. Spain is run by Muslims for about 600 years. And during this time in Northern Africa, also in Arabia, the Muslim empires are among the most advanced civilizations in the world, along with China. The technology in these empires is way better than what's in Europe. The science is way better than what's in Europe. So, if you are in North Africa and you decided not to become a Muslim, your penalty was higher taxes, for the most part. You had to pay higher taxes than the Muslims. There, for the most part, was not forced conversion. There were Christians who lived in Egypt. There still are some Christians who live in Egypt, Coptic Christians. And there weren't many Christians who lived in this area because it used to be part of the Roman Empire until Rome fell. There are people who believe in animism still who live in this area. Many people convert to Islam because their leaders do. Their leaders convert to Islam. They establish Islamic law in this area, and these become powerful North African Muslim empires. The Berbers, you don't need to write that down if you don't want to. The Almohads, they become very powerful Muslim empires until about the year 1200 or so. And they stay in North Africa. And actually, North Africa, even today, is predominantly a Muslim area. All right, let's do this. All right, so we talked about North Africa, which on our paper is kind of important. Now we're talking about West Africa, which is going to be extremely important for your paper. The next two slides are pretty big. They're a pretty big deal. All right, so let's talk about West Africa and how Islam comes in. We're going to start with Ghana. Ghana is a West African empire that grows and becomes powerful in the year AD 800. How does it become powerful? They have gold, and they start trading gold for other supplies, and they start building a very powerful empire. Basically what happens is, Ghana has gold. The people from North Africa, Arabia, even all the way to China, want this gold. So, they basically get plugged into the Silk Road. Ghana basically gets plugged into the Silk Road. I'm going to talk loud because I'm going to the back. So, basically what happens is that Ghana, over here, trading with North Africa, Arabia, China, gets plugged into the Silk Road. Another thing you could call it, and many historians call it this, the Afro-Eurasian trade network. The Afro-Eurasian trade network. Way too many people will take the Afro off that part but Africa is involved in this trade network. So that means Ghana also starts getting supplies that are from the Silk Road, for example. They do come into West Africa. Now what happens is, once people start coming into your kingdom and trading with you, what also is going to happen that we learned from the Silk Road? When you trade something, what else are you going to get? Cultural diffusion will happen. Once you start trading with people, cultural diffusion will happen. This is the reason why a lot of people now, the big fad for a lot of people in Minnesota is to have their kids go to Chinese immersion schools. Well, why is that? They want their kids to be able to do business with people from China because there'll probably be jobs there. Does that make sense? Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So, what happens is culture, though, will come in along with business. So, as these Muslim traders from North Africa are coming in, what else are they bringing?
Disease.
Not so much, not so much. Disease will come more when we talk about Columbian exchange into the Americas. Good guess. They're going to bring their religion. Their religion will come in. So Islam will come crossing the Sahara in the trade networks. Which makes sense because Muhammad was even a trader. He was a basic guy who worked in a market. He was a very good trader. So, what happens is Ghana grows and Islam slowly comes into the society. And eventually what happens is the leaders in Ghana convert to Islam. In the early 1000s, the leaders in Ghana convert to Islam. Once the leaders convert, many of the people convert as well. There's kind of like a slow process. People are converting. Eventually the leaders convert, and then the society becomes very Islamic. The leaders bring in a lot of Muslim advisors to help them run the empire. And one thing that Islam has is, by having like a whole set of laws, Islamic government works very well during this time period. It works well as a form of government, as a way to organize a society. So, Ghana grows as an empire, trade, Islam comes in. Now, not West African Islam is different than Islam in Arabia. Would it make sense that it'd be different? Yeah. It's thousands of miles away. They have their own culture too. So there's a writer, his name is Ibn Battuta, one of the best names ever. Ibn Battuta. He is a Muslim writer. And he travels all over the Afro-Eurasian trade network, going from society to society, meeting all the kings. He's got kind of an awesome life, wrote all about it. He comes into West Africa, and he starts writing about the Islam that exists there, because it's a Muslim society. And he actually, some parts of it he really likes. He writes that they're very well educated. They read very well. But he gets mad about some things because he thinks they're not following how the law should be. Like, for example, he thinks the West African women aren't following the right dress. They're showing too much of their bodies in West Africa, he says, for Islam. But even Ibn Battuta says. So we see as West African Islam is not the same as the Islam in Arabia. But also, even like Christianity, is Christianity the same in every culture? You think Christianity is the same in every culture? Go to different churches on Sunday. You'll find it's church celebrated in very different ways, culture by culture, even in Christianity. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah.
All right. So, also what happens is some people in Ghana become 100% Muslims. They totally take on the Muslim rules and laws, but some people stay with their animistic religion, with believing in more that everything has a spirit to it. But most of the people are somewhere in the middle, somewhere in between. Like they have some animistic beliefs and some Islamic beliefs. So a lot of the society and the government becomes more Islamic. There are still leaders in there, but it's mostly that the rulers now, it's an empire. It's no longer ruled by the traditional villages under Islamic law. And the people are choosing kind of like somewhere between Islam and animism in Ghana. What happens is in 1076, the North African Muslims come into Ghana and conquer it. They're the Almoravids. Almoravids come in. Ghana actually gets a little bit weaker. They lose control of some of the gold trade that they have. The Almoravids come in, they're able to conquer Ghana. But that doesn't end Islam in West Africa. Because two more empires come, who we're going to talk about in our next unit. Mali and the Songhai Empire, and they are established as Muslim kingdoms from 1200 to the 1600s. So Islamic kingdoms will exist in Africa for 400 more years, strong Islamic kingdoms. And we're going to learn more about those in the next chapter. All right? That was a whole lot. Let me stop the recording.
All right.